Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about film equipment and how it doesn't matter what equipment you have, what matters is the story that you want to tell. So this camera that I'm using at the moment is a Canon C100 Mark I. It's a 12-year-old camera at this point. It came out in 2012, and when it came out, it cost $12,000, right? Now, I bought this camera for £600, call that, I don't know, $900, let's say. So it depreciated a lot in value, and I bought it after it depreciated in value. But you know what? It's the same camera that does the same job, and just all that's different is the amount that people are willing to pay for it. I would never have spent £12,000 on this camera. And to be honest, I wouldn't spend £12,000 on any camera, really. I mean, I don't really see why I should do that, because at a certain point, the cameras that do cost this amount are going to get older and older, and as they get older and older, people will stop wanting them, they'll want new stuff, and I can be there to scavenge the old stuff. So when I got this, I got it on eBay. I got it on, you know, the bids. That's what eBay does. It does bidding and stuff like that, right? So I saw that it had 0 bids and it had 2 days left on it. So I put down a bid. They listed it at £600, so I put down £600 and like 1 pence, right? And so for the next couple of days, I sort of sat there and kind of just hoped no one would bid on it. And you know, I wasn't expecting much. I was expecting someone to bid on it because it's a Canon C100. It's Canon. It's a cinema camera. I thought, fucking, why isn't someone going to bid on it? No one ended up bidding on it, right? And it got to 1 hour left, and I was glued to the screen for that hour, refreshing that page, because I know how eBay works. People like to come in and snipe. That's what it's called, when someone comes in and bids at the very last second so that they can basically steal the thing away from the other person that already had the bid down. I knew that was possibly going to happen. And I was refreshing the page, kind of worried that I was going to not be able to get this camera. And no one sniped it. No one wanted it other than me. So, result. So I got the camera. Next up, I had to get some batteries, because it didn't come with batteries, and it took a specific type of battery. I don't know what kind of batteries it takes. I don't know how batteries work, but it needed special batteries, right? So I looked around, and on the Canon website, it listed them for like £200 a pop. I thought, oh, fuck, was that the catch? So I went back to eBay, and I found that on the wholesale thing, just buying it direct, you could get one for like £150. And I thought, okay, that's a bit better. So maybe I could get one, and that would be a bit of a problem. But I kind of need 2. I really need 2 for this sort of thing. And I was kind of worried about, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this work, you know? So what I thought I would do is go back onto the bids, and I found on the bids there was one for £50, and this guy had a few of them. So I put down a bid of £50 and 1 pence on every single one, and I did the same thing again, and I sat there, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited until they came to the last hour. And when I got to the last hour, no one sniped it, again, on all 3 of them. So I got 3 batteries for a quarter of the price that I was supposed to get them for, right? And I bet when the Canon C100 first came out, Canon was selling them for a hell of a lot more than £200. So I managed to get the entire setup there for £750. Then I needed to get a lens. So I thought, what kind of lens should I get? I want like a long lens. I was doing events at the time, so I like live events and stuff like that. So I wanted a long lens that could get that sort of thing, close-ups and stuff like that. So I found a 1988 70mm to 210mm lens. It's not the thing that this is being filmed on. It's a USM lens, so it's like the fairly like posh ones for the Canon, right? EF mount. And this lens came out in like 1988 or something, right? And it cost 60 quid, right? You want to get like a proper USM sort of lens that does that sort of thing, that has that level of like 70mm to 210mm USM, you're probably looking at about 400 quid. I got it for 60, just because I got the older one that people decided they don't want anymore because it's old and it's shit and it's decrepit, right? There's so many cheap, I remember I worked with one DP and he had what he called a Soviet lens. And it was like a weird aperture. It was like 27mm or something weird like that. And he liked using it every now and then because it gave him a specific look. It gave him this kind of dreamy sort of look that was really interesting. And I really liked it. And I asked him how much he paid for it. And he said something like 20 quid. 20 quid for a lens is fucking bargain. That's the sort of thing that if you went on Amazon and tried to find a lens for 20 quid, you're probably looking at something that would be like, you know, like one of those Chinese knockoff sort of things that's going to like last for no time whatsoever. And, you know, it worked. The lens worked really well because the mounts haven't changed in like the last 30, 40 years. So why can't I use older equipment? Why can't I use a 10-year-old camera? I don't need 4K. I don't need all these things because what are you watching this video in 4K? Did you watch the last video that had the option for 4K? Did you watch that in 4K? I doubt you did, because honestly, 4K looks exactly the fucking same as HD anyway. And HD kind of looks the same as 720p. So it's all kind of the same thing. The only reason you might want a 4K camera is for clients, if clients want 4K. And kind of the reason that clients want 4K is because they think that they're getting something better because they're getting it in 4K. But you know what? When I have a job that requires 4K, I can rent out a camera that does 4K, 40 quid, and I get paid like £1,000 for the job. Sort of whatever. And at some point, once I have enough money, I will get a 4K camera so I can stop doing that, because it will save me money in the long run. But I don't think that camera will become my new main one. I think this camera, I've formed some kind of bond with this camera. And you do that with your equipment that's near and dear to you. Like a guitar, like David Gilmour with his Black Strat, and he was using that for so long. You form a relationship with your equipment. You know, this camera that I've had, it's been with me to various different countries. It's been with me all across the UK. It's been with me to weird places. It's been with me to, like, you know, studio events. It's been with me all over the fucking place, right? And I like this camera, and I've been on adventures with this camera, and me and this camera have had experiences together, right? And I've formed this relationship with this camera, and you will form a relationship with the equipment that you get, no matter what it is, because it will be special to you. And that's the key thing. Rather than trying to chase the greatest technical requirements or the biggest numbers or the latest, greatest thing, you know, this is a 10-year-old camera, and people are constantly like asking me what camera I film these videos on, saying that the videos look beautiful and all that sort of stuff. Like, if you went onto like the videography subreddit or whatever, or I don't know, the filmmaker subreddit, they would probably tell you not to bother with this camera because it's old and it's shit, and you can get new things that will have like 4K, or you can have new things that have this and that. There's a couple issues that I have with this camera. One is like the viewfinder. You can pull it out and you can rotate it, but not in any real useful way. Like, I can't see myself through the viewfinder. I can't rotate it that much. Okay, and I'm not really sure why I can't do that. And on the Mark II, you can do that. Also, I can't really use this camera with a gimbal because some of the main functions are on this little side grip handle. And if you try and put the camera on a gimbal with the side mount thing, it doesn't fit whatsoever. And the balance is all fucked as well. So those are two little issues that were fixed with the Canon C100 Mark II, which I would consider getting at some point. And then I can use this C100 Mark I as like a B camera. I would consider getting that at some point, but at the moment, those cameras cost like 1,200 quid, and I don't really want to spend 1,200 quid on a camera. I'd rather wait for it to go down in price, because it's the same camera at the end of the day that at one point was the latest and greatest thing and that people are super impressed by. All that's changed is time, right? Like, people look at Lawrence of Arabia and think Lawrence of Arabia looks great, but, you know, the camera itself is incredibly outdated. You know, like, you know how the whole thing of like they sent man to the moon with technology that isn't even like as good as your iPhone, right? And that's the iPhone like 1, not like the iPhone 16 or whatever they're on now, right? So whatever equipment that you want to get, try and get something that's old, but like not so old that it's become vintage that people want it again because of the oldness. Get something that nobody wants and make it your own, and make a style for yourself out of it. Because this camera, I don't really see anyone else filming with a Canon C100 these days. So I get to own this space, this cinematic landscape that the C100 can do. It's mine, basically, because I'm one of the few people that are actually using it. And there's so many people out there that are using the, I don't know, the Sony A7 Mark VI or the, I don't know, Panasonic GH8 or whatever, these like grand new cameras that came out in the past couple of years that have the latest and greatest things, right? You don't need these features. Are you going to use them? Sure, you might use them once or twice. Now I've used them, I'm bored of them, right? I'm not going to use them every single day. I don't need to film everything in 200 frames a second. I don't need to film everything in 8K. I don't need this stuff, because all I need is a camera that has a good color science, is reliable, is sturdy, with a good battery life. That's all I need, right? As long as it looks nice, it's easy to use, and it functions, that's good enough for me, right? Because I'm going to put my camera through a lot of shit, right? Like, sorry. I put my camera through an awful lot of stuff, okay? And it's very, very, very hard for the camera to keep up with me. So I made sure to get a camera that could keep up with me. rather than getting something that is maybe like the Sony A7 sort of stuff. The batteries on those are awful. They barely last more than a couple hours. I wouldn't get any use out of that. It would be pointless to me, because even though it might have a nicer, sharper, crisper look, I don't see how it's necessarily better just because you can see more detail. Would this video be better if you could make out every blade of grass? Would this video be better if you could see every, hang on, let me just find an actual rock or something. Would it be better if you could see every single ripple in absolute crisp detail and zoom in and hone in on every single molecule of that water? What does the texture of the water have to do with what I'm saying? And what does the lighting of whatever film you're trying to make have to do with the story that's at hand? Can you make the lighting fit the story? That's the key thing, rather than trying to make the story fit the technicalities. Because, you know, there wouldn't be any point in filming something like, if you're trying to replicate some kind of old style movie, like 40s, 50s sort of era cinema, you wouldn't film that on a red. Why would you do that? And you spent all this money, so you might as well use a red, but it's not what this is, film is trying to do. So you would end up just filming something that just feels a bit like at odds with itself and incompatible with its own nature. So I would say try and get something that works for you. And that's the key thing, rather than trying to get what people tell you is important to have. I hope you managed to get something out of this video, because it's quite important sort of as a topic to me, because I really took a risk with getting this camera. I was either going to get this camera or I was going to get the Sony A7 Mark III. And that cost like 3 times as much as this. And you know what? I'm so glad I didn't waste that money, because I wouldn't have enjoyed that camera anywhere near as much as this. I've used the Sony A7 Mark III, and don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic camera. But this is my camera. This is me. This camera feels like me in a way that the Sony didn't. So that's what I would say to you, is try and get something that feels you. And if you can make use of some old deals, get some like eBay thing that nobody wants anymore, then you're in the money. Literally as well, because you'll be saving money as well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video, everybody. Hope you have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye. Oh, God.